Welcome and good morning. This is Hangout with Coach Kerry, and my name is Kerry Brown, and I'm looking forward to spending the next 20 to 30 minutes with you sharing some insights on business success. So if you're an entrepreneur, small business owner, and you find yourself struggling with some of the aspects of business, whether it's time management, productivity, whether it's systems, whether it's knowing when to hire, when to hire and outsource something, even though you may not want to have staff. I mean, all of these pieces, because would you agree as an entrepreneur or a solopreneur that maybe even a sales professional, you're juggling a lot of balls in the air? Well, in fact, that's the kind of issues that we bring to this show every single week. And make sure you go to hangoutwithcoachkerry.com where you can watch upcoming shows, and soon you'll be able to watch live shows there as well. So I'm really looking forward to today's episode. I have 3 Academy members on with me today, and I'd like them to introduce themselves to you. So the first one is I'm going to introduce Kathy Scott. So Kathy, tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
Hi, Kerry. Thanks for having me on again. I always enjoy our Monday morning sessions. I have a business that specializes in women's tours, and we do wonderful women's tours all over the world. As a matter of fact, I've got one coming up that I'm just releasing with you hosting it, so that should be a lot of fun. That's to the Baltics for 2015.
I'm excited about that. That'll be great. Good. Thank you. Thanks, Kathy. And they can find out more about you by going to your website. And what is that?
It's nichetravel.ca. Nice and simple.
Perfect. That's great. Good. Okay, I want to introduce my next panelist, and that is Diana Galbraith. So Diana, tell us a little bit. Actually, I should call you Dr. Diana because you are a medical doctor. So Diana, tell the audience a little bit about you.
Well, as you mentioned, I was a former physician, but what I do now is specifically work with professional women over 40. And if you think about it, these are the women who have given their all to their work, their families, their friends, but often at the cost of their own health and well-being. And so they may carry extra weight, struggle with their energy levels, or be concerned about their blood pressure going up, just things like that. I also know that these women have incredibly busy lifestyles. So what I do is I really work with them to come up with tangible, doable things that they can fit into their busy lifestyle that can make a big impact over time and make a big difference in their health and well-being and their energy levels. So
great.
That's what I do.
And how can they find out about you, Diana?
They can go to my website, www.healthtalks.ca.
Great, thank you. And Grace Gary, tell us a little bit about you, Grace.
Hi, Kerry. Thanks for having me on again today. I always find these really useful. So I'm a counsellor, and my business is Graceful Solutions, and I help people who have hit a roadblock in life to get unstuck and to reach the results that they want. So I work around relationships, emotional health, and also people who put on weight because of emotional stress. And I put out tips every month, so if anybody wants those tips, check out my website, gracefulsolutions.ca.
Great, excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you all of my Academy panelists today. It's great to have you on this. You bring some great questions quite often to the calls. Well, always you bring great questions. And so it gives our audience, our opportunity to be able to hear some real life questions and some real life issues. And to see that as a business coach, I'm a very practical coach. I deal with real life, everyday issues and topics that people like yourselves need to deal with. So today, our theme seems to sound like it's going to be a little bit about systems. So I'm going to go back to you, Kathy, and I'm going to have you ask me your first question, and then I'll give you and the rest of the Academy members and our audience some suggestions and some tips around how to handle that. So Kathy, over to you.
Great, Kerry. One of the things that I find that I struggle with is in the travel business, I always have multiple files at the ready, whether it's client files or working on a project files. And I'm just wondering if you have some sort of an idea of what you can give me to keep myself not looking so cluttered in the office.
Great question, Kathy. And that is quite often what happens as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, that we do have a lot of plates and balls in the air, and we're trying to do many things. You know, in the corporate world, you might have had an assistant helping you immediately, but in this world, we're doing most of the stuff on our own. So a couple of things that I would recommend for you, Kathy, and for anyone else who this might be applicable to, is what you want to do is ask yourself first, how's the information coming to me, or what is the information, in what format is it? So if it's paper, that's one piece. If it's electronic, that's another. And sometimes there tends to be both of those. So I really recommend that anything that's an active file, so anything that you're working on, if it's paper, what you do is you create a folder, a file, that deals with that particular project. So let's say it is that Baltic tour, for an example, that you're putting together, and you're getting documentation or pieces of paper or whatever there might happen to be. Then what you would do is you would use that particular folder just for Baltic tour information. So all of that would go in it. And then you would keep those organized. So let's say you may have at any given time 10 to 15 different folders that are active. You want to have those really close at your hand. So anything that comes in, be it paper, what you would do is immediately put it into that file. It wouldn't sit on your desk. You'd immediately put it on your file. And then, as you know from our time management episodes that we've done, what you're going to do is put a note in your calendar to actually look at that particular file during a certain, maybe you need to every day take a look at that. What you're going to do is put a note in there to take that file, bring it out, and then start working on it. So that's if it's paper. If it's digital, electronic, and it comes by email or there's various documents, what I recommend you do is you create a folder in your email program. Now, I particularly use Outlook, and there's an easy way to use folders in that. But whatever system you're using, is have a way in which you would drag that email into that particular folder, so that you've got that information all there together. Now, again, the question arises, well, what if I forget about that email is in there? Well, this is where you want to make sure in your calendar you're setting aside time to go to that specific folder, open it up, and be able to respond to things that are in there. So that's really the question of the answer to how to deal with projects, whether they're digital or whether they're file. So Kathy, tell me, did that answer your question? Did that give you some tips that you think you can use?
Yes, it's great. Good reminders on the productivity.
Great. Good. Excellent. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Diana now. And Diana, ask me your question.
Sorry, just needed to unmute myself there for a moment. So my question actually has to do for someone who's just really starting out, and you're a solopreneur, so you don't always have a lot of extra resources. When should you consider outsourcing or hiring somebody to do things? And again, assuming this is someone just starting out who doesn't have a lot of extra resources. So just the balance there.
Great question, Diana. And in fact, I would say that whether someone's starting out or whether they're further along, there's often a mindset that rather than pay somebody else to do it, I can do it myself. So really the question comes to is understanding that in business, there are things that no matter how well you can do them, they're not the best use of your time. So if you were to put a value on your time per hour, whatever that it is, it's really going to be significantly more than it would be to hire somebody else to do certain things. And the way the internet is today, there's so many things you can get done that isn't necessarily something that's going to be a consistent service that you're going to get, but you're going to be able to hire somebody to do that specific service, so then you can be doing the most and the highest and the most important things, the highest meaning highest income generating activities. Right. So really the decision is this activity actually, does it have the possibility for me to generate income, or is this more what I'm going to call administration and background things? And if the answer is it's administration and background things, then you really want to take a look at how can you outsource that? How can you find someone to do that work? Now, what that also leads to is making sure that you are really clear on what you want that person to do, what that job description is, what your expectations are, so that you can really outline that for them. Because you may end up interviewing a couple of people in order to take that particular job on. So the clearer you are, the less challenge you're going to have. And then, of course, what you have to do is set up how you're going to communicate, how regularly you're going to communicate, what are going to be benchmarks in terms of that project getting done. So the other thing that always happens, or at least I've experienced this, is that often as solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, we like spending our time on things that we like to do. And the important thing is to make sure that you're actually spending your time on the things that are actually income generating or have the highest potential to generate income, not just the things that you like to do. So what we don't want to do is have a business, though, where you're doing nothing that's important to you. So those are the things that you would put off, or you would set a time in your schedule to do, that are when you're less likely to be able to contact a potential client, when you're less likely to be able to, or maybe you're not thinking at your highest and best, which is what you need for business planning and long-term planning, or new product or content creation, or whatever your business happens to be. So you might end up doing that type of thing, later in the evening, where you're giving yourself a reward for the end of the day of having given it a good effort during that day. So back to the initial question, hopefully I've answered that, is when do you do that? Well, right out of the gate, you want to make sure that you are using your time to its highest and best use. And this is where it's important also to take a look at putting together a budget, where you do allow in your budget to be able to outsource some of those things. And that becomes a decision with, well, if I'm going to spend X amount of dollars per hour hiring somebody else to do it, and I can go out and do this, then that's where your time's best spent. It's not necessarily behind your desk. One of the little tips is to actually create what I call an organizational chart, which is basically, you would be in all the different positions in it. You're the VP of marketing and the VP of finance and the VP of HR and the VP of operations and all of those things. And then below those are the various lower level jobs that are involved in those. So that the highest paid jobs, if you were to put a dollar value on them, would be at the highest part of that organizational chart, and that the ones at the bottom would only have maybe a single dollar sign or even a cent if you wanted to show that on it. And you can go online and Google sample organizational charts and see all sorts of varieties of those for some tips and strategies on that. So the idea is you're going to be looking at outsourcing the things on the bottom level of that organizational chart. So then once you've decided you're going to do that, then you want to put in place a practice, a sort of a hiring practice of how you hire outsourced people. What's the criteria? How do you hold them accountable? Put all that in place. So Diana, did that answer your question? It maybe answered that and more, but did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that was very good. Very good. Thank you, Kerry.
You're welcome. Good. And now we're going to go on to Grace. And Grace, your question for me, please, today.
So, Kerry, I wanted to find a good way to have a database for my clients. And as you know about me, I'm very fond of paper, so I already have a very simple system where people are in according to their first name. Now, what I would like is a database where I can kind of, what I'm interested in is, what are the categories that are useful to record when working with someone? So I can think of perhaps their date of birth, when they worked with me, what was the issue. So I'm just trying to think about what would be your ways, what are useful piece of information to keep a record of that I might want to go back and look up someone under a certain thing.
Great question, Grace. And I think the sooner that you can create some or put together some kind of a database, in fact, the proper language around that is a customer relationship management system, or you might hear it called a CRM. And depending upon what your goals are and how large you want to grow your database, you may use one system over another. So you have to do a little bit of research. What I would say is start with a simple program first, because you can always export your data into one later that has more systems and tools in it. So for a very simple system, your email program may in fact already have some kind of a customer relationship management system. Certainly the people who are using Outlook, it does have that. So I take a look to see if it does. if your database is very small, you can use an Excel spreadsheet, for an example. I mean, you can have an Excel spreadsheet that's pages long, and you can sort by columns. So you could find people that way as well. I'm a huge fan of keeping it in a digital format, because then it has so many different ways that you can research within it. So categories. I think it's important, and Grace, you kind of brought this up, and this kind of triggered something for me. I think it's really important to make sure that the data you collect isn't just information for you in terms of that relationship you might have with that person. You also want to start gathering data that's really good from a business analyst standpoint. Because remember, you are in business, even if you're a solopreneur. I want you to start thinking of yourself as a business owner. So what would be useful information for you to know as a business owner? Well, it would be useful to know where that client or customer came from. Really important, because then you know if your marketing efforts are actually working or not, because you want to start creating predictable income. So where did they come from? If they were a referral source, how can you track that referral source from that other person? Or who the referee was? You want to be able to track that. You might want to track what the average dollar sale of that client is as well. So then you can start getting a profile of who your ideal customer is, especially if you're building a more boutique style business where you're going to be offering extra special service to your clients over and above someone who might be more interested in volume. And if that's the case, then there's some really key pieces. How much money are they spending? What are the nuances of that particular client? Because it's going to give you that research back. So you know where your time is best spent, and to be able to target that client. So for an example, if you were going to use Excel spreadsheet, for an example, the simplest one that I would consider for a person to consider is if you created various columns that all had in them, or all had at the top of them, referral source, average dollar sale, all of those things across it. Excel allows you to actually sort people based on if there's a notation in that column, and it will bundle them all together. So if you were using a particular networking source, for example, and you decided you wanted to see how many clients you'd received from that networking source, then if you had that as a heading on one of your columns, you could click on that and it would sort them all immediately there. Outlook, for an example, has the ability for you to be able to categorize people and to be able to put them into different color categories as well. So what you would do is you would go in and set up those particular categories. So when you're adding someone into your database, you would make sure that they're selected under that category. And then you can go in, select all the people in that category, and there's your list right there. So it's a very simple way to do that. The more sophisticated systems will allow you to sort people based on maybe what products that they've purchased from you. Again, you want to start thinking bigger picture. What would be the valuable information for you to know, not just on that client, but also for you from a business standpoint, so you know how to market to them, or what I mean market to them is provide them tools and strategies. If you created a great new counseling tool that you wanted to give to your clients who fit this particular category, you'd want to be able to pull up that list and then be able to send it to them. So Grace, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great, Kerry. I really like the idea of thinking about analyzing the information so that, referral sources, and I think also even date of birth. I'd like to be able to send my clients a birthday card, and so far it's hit and miss. Yes. But that sort of information is a way of promoting one's business, as well as it's just a nice thing to do.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, the Excel spreadsheet, unless you checked it every single day, wouldn't give you the birthday one, because of course, and then it's hard to send them a birthday card when it's on that particular day. Other ones do have reminders that you can set a reminder for a week ahead, so you could pop one in the mail if you wanted to do that. So based on our time, I've got time for some more quick questions. So Kathy, back to you. Do you have another quick question for me? And I'll make sure that my answer is quick, so hopefully all three of you can have time to ask me another question.
Well, mine's still going back to my original question. It's sort of hinging on that. Sometimes I get multiple emails from even one person in a day, where it's like a quick yes or no answer, and the thought of dragging and dropping those all into a file when I've got so many is a bit onerous for me. So, do you have another suggestion for keeping track of the little bits of stuff that come in? Would you put them in one spot, or what would you do?
Great question, Kathy. And if you recall from the time management episode that we talked about, there's something called the 2-minute rule. And the 2-minute rule is that when you're actually sorting through your emails, so this is not the time of day when you're actually doing the work in your inbox and answering, lots of questions and whatnot. This is actually that time that you've set aside to sort and whatever. So if you come across, so you've done all your sorting, and then you look and you say, okay, this I can answer in less than 2 minutes, you can answer that that email, and so do it in that time. So the question, though, I think behind that for you was, how do you keep track if you've actually responded to that person, or have you answered the question for them? And that is a bit trickier to make sure that you've got that handled. If you have, a large database, one of the things you may want to do is drag that email into their name, so then they're saved, and then you'll have a running total of all of the emails relating to them. That you could do that. Then this goes back to Grace's question, which was about customer relationship management system. So you've got that kind of tracked, so that you've answered them. The other piece sometimes happens is that if you've sent an email to someone and you're expecting something back, how do you wait for that? So 2 things. One of them is making sure that in your email you are clear that you are expecting an answer back by a certain date. And that's a really important thing. And then what I do, and just my habit, when I send that email off to them, I BCC that email for myself. And then so yes, I do get another email back in my inbox. And then what I will do is I will change the subject. And I will change the subject to waiting for, WF, and I will drag it to the calendar. So if it's Friday, I'm waiting for it to come back, I drag it. And, while it may seem like, dragging feels a bit onerous, that is part of the organizational piece. So then on Fridays, Kathy, if I'm expecting an email back from you, what will happen is that little piece in the calendar will tell me, oh, I'm waiting for that back from Kathy. And if I've heard from you, great, I just ignore it. If I haven't, then it prompts me to send you another email to check in on that. So Kathy, did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Actually, the BCC, that's perfect for me. I love it.
Good. Excellent. Good. So now I'm going to go to Diana. Do you have a quick question for me?
I loved Kathy's question there. I was listening. That was really, really good. Along that line, we spend so much time on our computers, and it's so easy to always allow email to distract us, to gravitate. Oh, I got another email, and go check it out when we're in the midst of something. It's a really hard habit to break. So just some suggestions on not letting email be that constant distraction that it can be.
Yes, well, Diana, and it's interesting. As you know, I've devoted a number of episodes to time management, and email always ends up showing up in that. So the first thing, of course, is you have to shut off your automatic receipt of emails, so that you're not getting a notification. So you want to have that off, absolutely. And so if that's it, so that's the number one. The second one is if you're doing work that isn't within your email program, close it down, because then you're not even tempted to hit the send and receive. And remember, a lot of this is just developing the new habits. Right now you have a habit of checking your email all the time. It's kind of like a new present, a Christmas present that shows up. So what you want to do is make sure that you are putting in place a structure that's going to support you and serve you so that you don't get distracted. So if you end up closing down your email program, then there's a couple of times a day you're going to go in, you're going to open up your email program, you're going to first of all sort, move everything around, and then you set aside time to deal with things in the 2-minute rule, get those out of the way, and then your longer ones, you're going to decide whether it's something you're going to do right now, whether you're delegating to somebody else or whether you're actually going to put it into your calendar to respond back at another time. So hopefully that was helpful, Diana. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think just the biggest thing there being just shut it down when you're not wanting it to distract you. That's great. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. Okay, Grace, so on to you for a last question. What do you have for me?
I was amused that Kerry, with Diana and that previous question, the reminder to look at what are the income generating activities as opposed to the things you feel like doing.
Yes.
I was all about to go to the supermarket after this call and get the ingredients for today's dinner, which is highly enjoyable for me. And I realized I had lots of follow-up to do now. That's a much higher priority rather than making dinner, which is so guilty as accused. It was a great reminder.
Great. Good. Good. Excellent. Well, then I think today I just want to wrap up the call today. First of all, I want to thank my Academy members for being panelists today. I always appreciate your feedback and your input, and I know our audience appreciates real live questions from real live entrepreneurs dealing with real business, real issues, real questions. So I really appreciate that. So today there was a lot of questions around systems, and one of the things I want to encourage you to do is if you find there's a particular area in your business that you're struggling with, that you get distracted, or you are, you're thinking, well, this is cumbersome, or I'm repeating myself. How do I save time because I'm doing this repetitively over and over again? You haven't created a system for that. I'm really going to encourage you to stop and say, what's the system I could put in place that if it was there, I would be more ... So whether that's organized, more efficient, more credible with my clients because you're following up with them when you say you're going to follow up with them. Whatever that end of that sentence is, I really encourage you to ask that all the time. So anyway, I look forward to having you on another call soon. Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific live, or you can go to www.hangoutwithcoachkerry.com for all of past episodes. And lots of tools and resources. The website's got lots of things on there, so please keep checking back regularly. So until then, have a great and productive week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kerry.